So it doesn't really matter whether you're a beginning painter or an experienced painter. There are definitely things that you need to get the job done when it comes to miniature painting. Hey guys, welcome to Dicejunkies Paint Lab. My name is Tim with Eldritch Ashes Studios, as always, and today we're going to do something a little bit different. It's not going to be so much painting in this video, in fact not any at all. Today I'm going to be covering over several different things that really will help get somebody started in painting, or could be used as a gift for an experienced painter. First thing I want you to do is make sure that you go and hit the subscribe button. If you subscribe, then that is going to be the best way for you to find out when the next video is coming up and see what we're going to be doing next. Also hit us up on Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, all that good stuff. Now that's out of the way, what I've done is put together more of like a painting, a miniature painting essentials or gift guide. The time of this video, it is fairly close to Christmas. These items are still available, and I have gone through to figure out what in my opinion, some of the best things that you can get from Amazon very easily for beginner painters or for experienced painters. So keep that in mind. Now, there's a lot of things that go into miniature painting. I mean, you need the miniatures, you need stuff to prep the miniatures before you paint them, you need primer, you could get into airbrushing, matte supplies for masking, you could get into all sorts of different things. But I've broken it down into 3 essentials: paint, the brushes, and a palette. You've got to have something to paint the miniatures, you've got to have something to paint the miniatures with, and you have to have something to put the paint on. So before I really get into describing what I have chosen, I do want to say that, of course, first off, none of this is sponsored by these. These are my own personal opinions. And secondly, these are my opinions. If you think that there's better stuff out there for beginners, or if you think that there is better stuff out there for experienced painters, hit me a line, let me know in the comments. I am more than happy to discuss this stuff with you and figure out what is best. So let's get started with this. First thing I'm going to be starting about is paint. So for the beginner, I chose Army Painter's Mega Paint Set. Now, this is something that you can get on Amazon. I think it normally retails for about $125. There is another version of this. It's kind of like a basic set. That one, I think, is normally around $40, but you can get it if you're a Prime member for like $20. This one, like I said, it's $125. If you're a Prime member, you can get it for about $94. That's the cheapest that I found it on there. And I went with the Mega Paint Set because you get more bang for your buck. What you get with this set, you get 50 colors, you get a free brush, and you get a painting tips booklet. May not be great if you already know about painting, but if you're really just breaking into it, all you need is this set and something to put your paints on. Which could be as simple as going to Walmart or, Target or wherever you can find cheap hobby supplies and get one of those cheap little palettes. Really, a nice piece of plastic will do too. I mean, if you're just beginning, you can go super cheap with that. But the pros for getting the Mega Paint Set, I would have to say you get a lot of paint out of this. For $94, 50 colors, that's pretty good. It comes with a multitude of different shades. It comes with some matte varnish. It comes with a medium that you can use to help thin down the actual paint itself. It comes with washes, and they all come in quality dropper bottles. Unlike some things that you can get, like Citadel's paints, where it comes in the pots, which for beginners especially, it's hard to remember to close them fully, because that will definitely dry out and clump up your paints. As far as cons, some of these colors that you get, they're going to be rarely used, so you do get some duds. There may be some things that you're not going to use all the time. The Army Painter paints, which if you watched a couple of the other videos that I've done, they need a lot of shaking and mixing before they're really usable. And in all, I mean, Army Painter is the cheaper quality, so it is still a very good made for miniatures paint, but it does have a little bit less pigmentation than something like Citadel paints, which are for models. So for the experienced painter, I chose Vallejo Game Colors Basic Paint Set. So this big thing comes from Amazon. I think it normally retails at $299, but I saw it for $200 if you're a Prime member. What you get in this, you do get 3 brushes, but you get 72 of Vallejo's Game Color paints. They all come in the little bottles, and it comes in a little carrying case, which is pretty cool. The pros for this one, it's great quality. Vallejo makes good stuff. I use Vallejo. I use Army Painter too, but Vallejo is kind of my go-to for more of the studio quality, the masterpiece show-off pieces. Same thing for Citadel P3. It is a lot more along the lines of things that you want to use to paint really good looking models. There's a really good variety in here, and like I mentioned, the pigmentation for this stuff is way better than you're going to get in the Army Painter brand. The cons, as opposed to the Army Painter Mega Set, doesn't come with any washes, so it's not a complete set like you would get with the Army Painter box. It is expensive. I mean, $299, $300 for a bunch of paints. That may be a little standoffish when it comes to trying to find a gift for somebody. But for a real experienced painter, I mean, you get the full line, and it's cheaper to buy it this way than it is to buy them individually. The last con that I would have to give to this one is that the case itself is not very sturdy. I personally have not bought this one, but I've read a lot of reviews on this particular thing. People rave about the paints, about the quality of the paints, about the variety. It's the case. It's always the case. It's a little bit cheaper. It's something that you're probably going to want to replace fairly quickly. And once you do, you should be good. So now that you have some paint, you've got to have something to paint with. So for our brushes, for the beginner, I went again with Army Painter. They have a War Games Mega Brush Set. So this thing, it ranges on Amazon, different prices. I found it for about $40. And what you get in the box, you get 11 brushes for a complete variety of mini painting needs. The other thing is that just like the Mega Paint Set, you get a little booklet that tells you what each of the brushes is for. So if for a beginner that doesn't know really, well, what kind of brush do I need to use for dry brushing? What brush is better if I'm going to be doing a lot of base coating? The booklet tells you, which is really cool. The pros for this one, quantity for sure. 11 brushes at $40, that's pretty good. I would have to say, I mean, it's less than $4 for each brush, and they're decently quality. It's a mixture of both Sable and Attn brushes. Attn's mainly going to be for the dry brushes, and they've got a terrain brush in there. But the Sables are for your detail and regiment brushes, the ones that you're going to be using more often. The other thing is that with Army Painter, they have a very uniquely shaped handle. It's a triangular handle instead of a circular handle. So it's meant to be used more for like a comfort grip style. I don't see that much different. I use Army Painter brushes, I've used Winsor Newtons, I've used Citadel brushes, and it doesn't really matter to me. Holding them for a long time is a pain. The main thing that makes their triangular shape better is they're not going to roll off the desk, which is wonderful. I mean, you get to start, moving around, grabbing different paints, you set down your brush, it starts rolling, and now you've got a brush on the floor that's covered in cat hair or dog hair. Who knows what, you're going to have to wash the entire thing before you start painting again. So those are definitely the pros. The cons for this one, the brushes, they're not going to last nearly as long as some of the higher quality brushes. They kind of warp their shape and they lose the chiseled point a little bit easier. I've noticed that for the Army Painter, the ferrule, the part that holds the hairs of the brush in, is a little bit looser. You wind up with more stray hairs, and you may need to do a little bit of maintenance before it's usable right out of the box. But for the most part, it's a fairly good quality. For the experienced painter, I have to go with Winsor & Newton Series 7 Sable watercolor brushes. You have to be specific with these because Winsor & Newton, they make a lot of different types of brushes for painters, and their Series 7 watercolor brand is perfect for miniature painting. It's really high quality. What we do with miniature painting, we use acrylics, but it's with thinning down the paints, with the quality, if you're using really high quality paints, it's a lot more akin to watercolors. So you want the wicking, you want the chiseled edge, you want the type of quality that you're going to get with the Winsor & Newtons. And those are definitely the pros of this one. On Amazon, you can get them ranging anywhere between $10 and $15 a piece. And that's one of the major cons with this one. I mean, it is pricey. They are individual. They have box sets on there. Don't look at them. They are ridiculously expensive. You are actually better off buying them individually. And the other thing that I would have to say that is a con for the Winsor & Newton Series 7s, in order to maintain the good quality, you are going to have to keep them up. You're going to have to maintain them. You're going to have to clean them. You're going to have to use brush conditioner. With some of your cheaper stuff, not necessarily like the Army Painter ones that I mentioned before, or Citadel brushes, anything that you would buy specifically for miniature painting. But if you just go with cheap stuff that you can get from Michael's, Hobby Lobby, craft stores, they're disposable. I mean, they're not going to last, so you might as well just work the dog crap out of them. And it's fine because you can just go buy another ones. But the Winsor & Newtons, they're so expensive that you are definitely going to want to take care of them. So you've got your paint, you've got your brushes, and now you need something to put that paint on besides the miniatures themselves. A good palette is something that can really... It doesn't seem like a lot, but it is very useful when it comes to doing your miniature painting. So for the beginner, and the cool thing about it is that both of these are fairly cheap. The beginner, I chose Citadel's Palette Pad. You can find them on Amazon, about $9. And what it is it is a pad of plastic paper. It's got about 20 sheets of these things. And you just rip off a sheet, or you can use it directly from the pad itself. Put your paint on, you can thin your paints on there. It works just like a normal weld palette, but I prefer using the palette pad over a well for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's flat. You can shape your brush directly on the pad after you've you know, loaded it with your paint. You don't have to go to a flat part on your palette. It's all flat. And the other thing is, you know, unless you want to wash your palettes a whole lot, which is just annoying, it's disposable. It's cheap enough that you can just, you know, go through one, flip it to the other side, and you're good to go. The problems with this is that it's small. It's not that big. You don't get a lot of use out of it. It's mainly, I find that I can go through one set of miniatures or one really detailed miniature before I have to switch to the other side. Sometimes on really detailed miniatures, when I'm really trying to give it my all, I have to use both sides or use multiple sheets. And it is rather, it's plain. It's a palette. That's all it is. It's a sheet of plastic paper and you put paint on it. For the experienced painter, and some people may agree with me, some people may not, I suggest the Masterson Sta-Wet palette. This thing, I mean, it's fairly cheap. It's only a couple of dollars more than you would find the palette pad that I'm talking about. It's $11. You get the palette itself. It's the wet palette, you know, like a container. You get a sponge and you get acrylic sheets. So it's a specialized sheet of paper that is mixed with acrylic. It's meant to stay wet with the sponge, and you put your paints directly on top of it. Some people say that when you're doing it for miniature painting, because this is meant to be used for heavier duty acrylics, and some people don't like using the sheets that come in with the palette itself. Perfectly fine. You can, you know, not use those. You can use parchment paper instead. The main thing is that that sponge is in there, and the pros for it is that it is somewhat transportable. It's got a lid so you can close it. As long as you don't tip it around too much, you can take it with you wherever you want to. The main thing is that it preserves the paints. It is going to keep your paints wet. They're not going to dry out on you. So if you're going to be painting for a long time in one color, you know, doing multiple layers, you don't have to worry about the paint drying out on you, which is great. You wind up using a lot less paint with that. It also helps you pre-thin your paints because you're going directly onto a wet surface. The problem with it is, number one, it pre-thins your paints, so not necessarily great to use for something like washes or inks. You would want to use probably an actual well for that one. I wouldn't even use the palette pad. The other thing is you really have to get used to it. It is something that a beginner, if you're just starting out painting, don't get a wet palette. Try just regular palettes. Try the palette pad. It is something that you really need to play around with and figure out the consistency. There's certain additives that you can put into the actual sponge itself because you just wet it with water. Some people say, you know, add a little bit of alcohol. Some people say add, you know, I've even heard Listerine or dish soap, and it is supposed to stop what I would say is the main con to the wet palette, and that is mold. These additives are supposed to stop mold from happening. I'll be honest, I have 2 wet palettes. I've kept paint in there for a month without any mold. The most important thing is keep it sealed, you know, keep the lid on it. And when I put water in there, I actually use distilled water instead of just using it straight from the tap. Feel free to do what you want. If you want to use stuff from the tap, if you want to use non-distilled water, if you want to mix it up and do whatever, you know, add these additives to it so it'll last longer, that's fine. But distilled water lasts for a month, no mold. So maybe I'm lucky. So that is what I would suggest for a beginner or for an experienced person. to give as a gift, or if you're just starting out and you're trying to figure out what you want to get into painting. So guys, that's what I've got for you. Check it out. Let me know what you think below. And until next time, just remember, painted minis always roll better.